Desert Eagle has appeared in hundreds of films. The Terminator carried one, John Wick has held one. It shows up on posters, in video games, in music videos, in the hands of villains and heroes alike. It became the visual symbol of a cool gun for decades. But here's a question. Name a single army in the world that officially issues it. You can't, because there isn't one. No regular army, no major special forces unit uses the Desert Eagle as a standard issue sidearm. And that's strange, considering how recognizable it is. Today we're going to break down why a pistol that looks like a weapon from the future turned out to be nearly useless for real-world application. We'll cover who actually invented it, why the military and police avoid it, why it became the biggest star in action movies for decades, how other movie weapons compare to it, and what all of this says about how we perceive weapons in general. Let's start with the history. The Desert Eagle was developed in the late 70s and early 80s. The concept came from the American company Magnum Research, while production was later taken over by the Israeli company Israel Military Industries. The goal was specific: create a powerful semi-automatic pistol chambered for large caliber cartridges that had previously been used in revolvers. It wasn't meant for the army, the police, or special services. It was designed primarily for hunters who needed a pistol with stopping power comparable to a rifle cartridge. At the time, hunters who wanted that kind of power had almost no choice but to carry heavy, slow-to-reload revolvers, and the idea of a semi-automatic alternative with a faster follow-up shot was genuinely appealing to that niche market. The first prototypes were tested in the early 80s, and by 1983, the pistol officially entered production, quickly gaining a reputation among hunters and gun enthusiasts as one of the most powerful production handguns available. And this is where the first quirk comes in. Standard pistols operate on a short recoil system. That's the norm for combat handguns. The Desert Eagle, on the other hand, uses a gas-operated system, the same kind found in rifles and assault rifles. This allowed it to fire extremely powerful cartridges like the .44 Magnum and even the .50 Action Express, but it also made the mechanism heavier and more complex than a typical combat pistol. In a sense, engineers took the internal logic of a rifle and squeezed it into the body of a handgun, which explains both its unusual power and its unusual size. From here, things get stranger. Security and military forces around the world avoid it, and there are several clear reasons why. The first reason is weight. A loaded Desert Eagle weighs almost 2 kilograms. That's roughly twice as heavy as a standard service pistol like the Glock 17 or the Beretta 92. For a police officer or soldier carrying a weapon on their belt for an entire shift, that difference matters. An extra kilogram might sound trivial, but over long hours on duty, it becomes a real burden and affects speed of movement, and it adds up when you're already carrying body armor, a rifle, spare magazines, and other gear. The second reason is recoil. Because of the powerful cartridge, firing quickly and accurately is nearly impossible without serious training. Between shots, you need time to bring the sights back on target, and in a real confrontation, that time is measured in fractions of a second. A standard combat pistol allows for several accurate follow-up shots much faster, which matters enormously in close-quarter situations where a fight can be decided in under 2 seconds. The third reason is size. It's massive. The length, the width of the grip, all of it makes concealed carry and fast draw difficult, and reaction speed is what decides the outcome of most real confrontations. While an operator is drawing a pistol this large, an opponent with a compact weapon has already had time to react. This is also why plainclothes officers and undercover agents who rely on discreet carry would never consider it a practical option. The fourth reason, one that's rarely mentioned, is reliability in field conditions. The gas-operated system is sensitive to fouling, and the complex design requires more careful maintenance than the simple, nearly indestructible combat pistols militaries prefer. Armed forces want a weapon that will fire even after being dragged through mud, sand, and water, and in that regard, a standard pistol is more dependable. Military procurement processes actually run weapons through torture tests: sand, mud, freezing temperatures, thousands of rounds without cleaning. And this is exactly the kind of environment where a Desert Eagle's more delicate action becomes a liability. And finally, the fifth reason is ammunition. 50 Action Express rounds cost several times more than standard pistol ammunition and aren't available at just any gun store. For an army that procures millions of rounds and has to supply units all over the world, that's not a minor detail. It's a serious logistics problem. It's far simpler to stock millions of rounds in a standard caliber than to maintain a separate supply chain for one flashy pistol. Add to that the fact that recoil-sensitive shooters often need more range time to stay proficient with it, and the training costs alone make it impractical for mass issue. And yet, the camera loves it, and that's not a coincidence either. Everything that works against it in real combat works perfectly on screen. Its massive size reads clearly in the frame even from a distance. The audience instantly registers it as something serious. The loud, sharp report and the visible muzzle flash look and sound dramatic in an action sequence. The angular, almost futuristic silhouette stands out against ordinary-looking pistols, which is exactly why directors and prop designers reach for it whenever they need to signal that a villain, a mercenary, or a lone wolf hero means business. That's precisely why filmmakers love it, not for realism, but because it looks imposing in just a few seconds of screen time. The audience doesn't need dialogue to understand a character is dangerous. Putting this particular pistol in their hand does the job instantly. It's worth noting this isn't unique to the Desert Eagle alone. Cinema has a long history of favoring visually striking weapons over practical ones, but few examples are as extreme as this one, where the gap between screen presence and real-world adoption is this wide. It's interesting to compare it with other movie weapons that follow the same logic. Sawed-off shotguns, for instance, are almost never used by real operators because of their poor accuracy at range, yet they show up constantly in action films for the same reason: visual and audio impact over practicality. The difference is that a sawed-off shotgun is at least cheap and simple. The Desert Eagle is neither. It's an expensive, complicated piece of engineering that exists almost entirely because of the image it projects, which makes it a much purer example of style triumphing over substance. Which creates a strange paradox. A weapon that's barely practical for real tactical use became the leading visual symbol of lethal firepower in pop culture. In reality, the Desert Eagle mainly exists in three contexts. First, sports shooting and hunting, the purpose it was originally built for, and in that context, it genuinely excels. Few production pistols can compete with it in raw power for hunting medium and large game. Second, collecting. Many buyers want it precisely as a status symbol, an iconic object, not a practical self-defense tool. It sits in a display case rather than a holster. And third, image-driven purchases, when someone wants the exact pistol they saw a character carry in an iconic film or video game, buying not a tool but a piece of cultural reference. In other words, film and gaming created demand for a pistol that has almost no place in real-world practical use. Gun manufacturers understand this perfectly, and still lean on the Desert Eagle's cinematic reputation as their main marketing pitch, because these days it's recognizability, not combat performance, that sells the gun. Limited edition versions, gold-plated models, and film-branded releases have become a significant part of how the company keeps the pistol commercially relevant decades after its combat shortcomings became obvious. There's one more interesting detail here. Over the decades, the Desert Eagle has barely changed in appearance. While combat pistols constantly evolve to meet military and police demands, getting lighter, more compact, more reliable, the Desert Eagle remains almost exactly as it was when it was created. And that's no accident. It doesn't need to adapt to military procurement requirements, because its real customer is the film industry and pop culture, and there the requirements are completely different. Not efficiency, but spectacle. In a way, the gun industry found something rarer than a good weapon, a good character. And characters don't need to be practical to stay popular. They just need to be memorable. This also says something broader about how we relate to weapons in general. We tend to assume that the most famous, most visually dominant weapon must also be the most effective one, that popularity in media reflects real-world performance. The Desert Eagle proves that assumption wrong in the clearest way possible. Its fame comes from an industry that has completely different priorities than the industries that actually decide what soldiers and police officers carry into the field. So that's how it happened. A pistol built for hunting became an action movie icon, not because it's effective in combat, but because it's effective on camera. Sometimes a weapon gets chosen not for what it actually does, but for how it looks and sounds at exactly the right moment. And the Desert Eagle might be the clearest example of how an image can completely detach from an object's practical purpose, proof that in pop culture, legend outlives function.